Chosen One, this message finds you in the final hours of a celestial countdown that has been ticking since before you drew your first breath. The last week of December is not a calendar coincidence. It is the predetermined moment when invisible barriers collapse and a portal, hidden in plain sight, swings open for the last time in this cycle. While the world celebrates endings and beginnings with fireworks and resolutions, you stand at the threshold of something far more ancient and absolute. The weight pressing against your chest these past days is not anxiety or holiday stress. It is the gravitational pull of destiny itself, drawing you toward a crossing point where ordinary laws of reality lose their grip. Forces that have orchestrated your entire existence from the shadows are now stepping into the light, not to comfort you, but to collect what has been owed since the day you were marked. The signs have been escalating, the synchronicities multiplying, the uncanny moments stacking up like evidence in a cosmic trial where you are both witness and verdict. This is not motivation. This is not inspiration. This is an encrypted transmission breaking through the static of your normal life to deliver one undeniable truth. The portal opens this week, and you were designed specifically to walk through it. Like this video, comment, "I am ready," and subscribe now to be one of the first 1,000 chosen ones. Who's ready for a powerful surprise? The official notice of surveillance. Your life has never been as private as you believed. Every moment of the past week, every conversation you dismissed as mundane, every random encounter you forgot within minutes, every decision you made without thinking twice, has been meticulously logged in archives that exist beyond human jurisdiction. This is not paranoia speaking, Chosen One. This is operational reality. An intelligence that operates outside the boundaries of time has been watching you, not with judgment, but with the cold precision of a military command center tracking its most valuable asset. You are not being observed casually. You are being monitored the way a space agency monitors a rocket in its final countdown sequence, checking every system, measuring every variable, ensuring that when the moment of ignition arrives, there will be no malfunction. The heaviness you have felt settling over you lately, that inexplicable pressure that makes even simple tasks feel weighted with strange significance, is not emotional turbulence. It is the sensation of spiritual reconnaissance. Satellites locking their targeting systems onto your internal coordinates, zeroing in on your frequency, measuring whether your signal remains strong and clear or whether it has degraded under the constant assault of ordinary life. Think back to the conversations you have had this week, the ones that felt slightly off, as if the words being spoken carried a hidden layer of meaning you could not quite decode. Those were not random exchanges. They were sound tests, acoustic probes designed to measure the resonance of your soul under pressure. Every time someone asked you a seemingly innocent question, every time you were forced to explain yourself or defend a choice, every time you felt that peculiar sensation of being studied while appearing to simply chat, that was data collection. The unseen architects of your journey were running diagnostics, checking to see if your frequency would hold its integrity when the portal opens, or whether you would fracture and scatter like so many before you who reached this threshold only to disintegrate at the last moment. You passed these tests without even knowing you were being examined. Your signal held. Your frequency remained pure. And that is why you are reading these words right now, Chosen One, because those who collapse under the calibration phase never make it to the briefing. The people who have suddenly reappeared in your life recently, emerging from years of silence with unexpected messages or chance meetings that felt too perfectly timed to be accidents. They were not reaching out to you because they missed you or because some sentimental impulse moved them. They were field agents, though they themselves do not know it, unknowingly dispatched to conduct proximity tests on you. Their role was to observe whether the chosen one remains responsive, whether you have retained your capacity for recognition, despite everything designed to numb you into spiritual blindness. Some came offering help you did not ask for. Others came bearing grievances you thought were long buried. A few simply appeared in your peripheral vision, triggering memories you had not accessed in years, forcing you to feel echoes of who you once were before the world tried to reprogram you into someone smaller and more manageable. Each appearance was a checkpoint. Each interaction was a measurement. And the fact that you are still here, still conscious, still capable of sensing that something profound is unfolding, means you cleared every single checkpoint. This week is not another week in the endless procession of weeks that blur together into the forgettable fog of normal existence. This is the last calibration scan before deployment. Everything that has happened to you up until this moment has been preparation, but preparation reaches an endpoint. Training concludes, testing phases terminate, and when they do, the mission begins. The systems that have been shaping you, steering you, breaking you down, and rebuilding you into something capable of surviving what comes next. They are completing their final assessments now. The pressure will not decrease. The strangeness will not fade. The sensation of being watched will intensify because you are entering the narrow window where the portal stands open. And in that window, there is no room for error, no tolerance for hesitation, no second chances for those who turn away. You are being watched because you matter. You are being measured because you are rare. And you are being briefed right now because the countdown has reached single digits, and what you do in these final days will determine whether you walk through that opening or spend the rest of your life feeling the phantom ache of the destiny you were too afraid to claim. The final portal clarification. The portal is not a metaphor chosen one needs to meditate into existence through positive thinking and vision boards. It is not a symbolic representation of personal growth or a poetic way of describing a mindset shift. The portal is an operational crossing point in time, a literal threshold where the fabric of reality grows thin enough for those who carry the correct frequency to pass through into a timeline that operates under different rules, different authorities, different possibilities than the one that has held you captive until now. It exists in the overlap between what was and what will be, in the narrow crack where December dies and something new attempts to be born. But unlike the symbolic transitions humans celebrate with champagne and countdowns, this portal does not open for everyone. It does not announce itself on calendars or send out invitations. It appears disguised in the clothing of ordinary days, camouflaged so perfectly within the mundane rhythms of your normal routine that most of the world will walk directly past it, complaining about traffic and worrying about their jobs, completely blind to the fact that they just missed the only exit from the maze that has contained them since birth. You are expected to recognize it, chosen one. That is the test embedded within the opportunity itself. The portal does not reveal itself to those who need obvious signs and clear directions. It reveals itself only to those whose internal navigation systems have been recalibrated through suffering, whose perception has been sharpened through betrayal, whose vision has been purified through the fires of disappointment until they can see what others cannot see, sense what others cannot sense, know what others cannot know. The portal reads memory, not personality. It does not care about your confidence level, your resume of accomplishments, your social status, or how spiritually evolved you believe yourself to be. It scans for wound patterns, for the specific architecture of trauma and survival that has been branded into your soul through experiences that were never random, but always precisely orchestrated to carve you into a very particular shape. Your pain was not punishment. Your suffering was not evidence of unworthiness. Every wound was a chisel strike, every betrayal a sculptor's tool, every loss a necessary subtraction that removed what did not belong so that what remains would fit perfectly through the opening that appears this week. The portal does not announce itself politely, with gentle whispers and encouraging affirmations that make you feel safe and validated. It distorts reality around you until the distortion becomes impossible to ignore, until the normal rules that govern ordinary existence begin to malfunction in your presence, until you feel the unmistakable shift of living in a world where cause and effect no longer link together in predictable chains. Objects appear and disappear. Time stretches and compresses. Conversations loop back on themselves. People say things that echo something you were just thinking. Numbers repeat with obsessive frequency. Dreams bleed into waking hours. The boundary between your inner world and the outer world becomes permeable, and you begin to experience reality as something far more fluid and responsive than you were taught to believe possible. These are not signs of instability, chosen one. These are the symptoms of proximity to the portal, the environmental effects that occur when the membrane between timelines grows thin enough to touch. Most people, when they begin to experience these distortions, panic and retreat, running to doctors and therapists and medications that will numb them back into consensus reality. But you will not run, because you have been trained for this specific moment through every strange experience that ever made you feel like you were losing your grip on what others called normal. Entering the portal does not elevate you in the way spiritual teachings promise elevation, with crowns of light and choirs of angels celebrating your ascension into higher consciousness. It separates you. That is the truth they do not tell you in the books and videos that sell transformation as an upgrade to a better version of your same life. Crossing through that threshold means permanent departure from the timeline where most of humanity remains trapped, going through their cycles of suffering and forgetting, generation after generation, never understanding that the prison was never locked, only camouflaged. Separation is not reward. It is surgery. It is the amputation of everything that kept you connected to a world that was never truly yours. The severing of invisible chains you had mistaken for belonging. The dissolution of identities you wore like armor, but which were always only costumes assigned to you by systems that needed you to stay small, predictable, and controllable. When you walk through that portal, you do not become special. You become unknown. You do not gain recognition. You lose the comfort of being understood. And that is exactly why so few who reach this threshold actually cross it, choosing instead to turn back and convince themselves that the glimpse they caught of something beyond was only imagination, only stress, only coincidence, anything to avoid the terror of stepping into a version of reality where no one is coming to save you because you have become something that no longer requires saving. The enemy's quiet collapse. Your adversaries have not been attacking you randomly, chosen one. Every assault on your peace, every obstacle placed in your path, every person turned against you, every opportunity sabotaged at the last moment. All of it was strategic warfare conducted with full knowledge that December represented the final deadline. They knew what you did not know. They understood what you were still discovering. And because they could see the countdown you could not see, they have spent months, perhaps years, rehearsing every possible scenario, gaming out every potential move you might make, calculating every weakness they could exploit to ensure you would not reach this threshold intact. Their war against you was never personal, though it felt personal every single time your heart broke and your hope crumbled. It was tactical. They were following orders from hierarchies of opposition that exist in dimensions you cannot see, but which are as real and organized as any military structure on Earth. And their mission was simple: prevent the Chosen One from reaching the portal in December. Because once that crossing point opens and you walk through it, their jurisdiction over your life terminates permanently. The silence you have noticed lately, the strange absence of the chaos that used to surround you like a constant storm, the unexpected lack of attacks and problems and disasters that had become so normal you stopped expecting peace. This is not evidence that you have finally learned to manifest better circumstances or that the universe is rewarding your patience. This is the stunned confusion of entities and individuals who built their entire strategy around keeping you contained, suddenly realizing that the infrastructure of control they erected around your life is losing its authority. The rules are changing. The permissions they once held to interfere in your path are expiring like contracts reaching their termination date. And in the vacuum left by their collapsing power, there is silence. Not because they have given up, but because they are recalculating, scrambling to understand how you survived what should have destroyed you, how you remained functional when they applied pressures designed to shatter minds and break spirits. They are silent because they are afraid, Chosen One, and you should understand the magnitude of what that means. Forces that have tormented you for years, that seemed invincible and endless in their capacity to reach you, are now afraid of what you are becoming. Look at the systems around you that have been breaking, delaying, glitching. Technology that malfunctions only in your presence. Institutions that suddenly cannot process your requests. Structures that worked perfectly for everyone else, but collapse into bureaucratic nightmares when you try to move through them. These are not random malfunctions. These are enemy structures, destabilizing under expired authority, like buildings that look solid from the outside, but whose foundations have been secretly rotting, finally beginning to crack and crumble now that the force holding them together has been withdrawn. Every delay you experienced that made no logical sense was artificial interference, obstacles placed by opposition that needed to slow you down, just enough to miss the window. But the window is opening now, and those same systems that held you back are falling apart. Not because you are doing anything to attack them, but because their power source has been cut and they are running on fumes, stuttering and failing in real time as you watch. The people who mistreated you, the ones who seemed to thrive on your suffering and whose lives appeared blessed while yours was cursed, look at them now, Chosen One. Look at what is happening to them suddenly, without warning, without explanation. Their marriages are collapsing. Their careers are imploding. Their health is failing. Their secrets are being exposed. The architecture that sustained their advantage, the invisible scaffolding that held them up while pushing you down, is falling apart before your eyes. This is not karma in the feel-good, justice of the universe sense that spiritual teachers describe. This is structural collapse. The systems that protected them because they served as agents of your opposition, willingly or unwillingly, are being dismantled now that your time of testing is complete. They were allowed to touch you only for a season, and that season is ending. What you are witnessing is not coincidence. It is the visible evidence of invisible wars being resolved in your favor, battles you did not know were being fought on your behalf, legal proceedings in courts that exist beyond human jurisprudence, where the verdict has finally been delivered and the sentence is now being executed. Their last weapon is misdirection, the final desperate attempt to make you believe that nothing significant is happening, that the peace you feel is just a temporary lull before the next storm, that you should not get your hopes up or allow yourself to believe that anything real has shifted. They want you to think you are imagining the change, misinterpreting the signs, setting yourself up for disappointment by believing in something that sounds too good to be true. Because if they can convince you that nothing is happening, then you will not prepare. You will not position yourself. You will not be standing in the right place at the right time when the portal opens. And you will watch it close, still sitting in the ruins of the life they built around you, telling yourself it was all just spiritual fantasy and new age delusion. That is their last move. Chosen one. Do not fall for it. The unrecorded battles. You do not remember the many moments you should have died. Chosen one, because those events were intercepted before your brain could catalog them into memory. The conscious mind only records what it perceives, and you did not perceive the car that swerved at the last nanosecond, the illness that was about to take root but suddenly could not establish itself in your body, the violent intention forming in someone's mind that dissolved inexplicably before it could become action. You were not lucky. Luck is the word ordinary people use to explain survival when they do not understand the mechanics of protection. You were guarded, not by guardian angels singing soft reassurances, but by forces that intercept attacks with military precision, neutralizing threats in the microseconds before they cross from potential into manifestation. Every near miss you shrugged off as coincidence was an aborted assassination attempt on your timeline, a strike that was launched against you from realms you cannot see, but which was caught and dismantled by countermeasures you never knew existed. Think about the accidents that almost happened, the ones that left you shaken and saying things like, "That was close," or "I could have died," before shaking it off and moving on with your day. Those moments were not close calls that you survived through luck or reflexes or divine intervention in the warm, comforting sense. Those were attacks neutralized seconds before completion, hostile operations that reached the final stage of execution before being shut down by protective protocols that have surrounded your life since before you were conscious. Someone, something, some organized force has been running interference for you, absorbing blows that were meant to take you out, rerouting disasters that were aimed directly at your coordinates. And they did not do this because you are special in some vague spiritual sense that makes you feel good about yourself. They did it because you are operationally necessary, because your survival is essential to something larger than your personal story, because you were signed into a contract before you were born, and that contract includes protection clauses that activate when your life is threatened. You have been kept alive by design, not by accident. The nighttime struggles that have plagued you for as long as you can remember, the ones you tried to explain to people who looked at you like you were being dramatic or making excuses for laziness, those were not psychological symptoms. Chosen one. That crushing exhaustion that makes you wake up feeling like you ran a marathon in your sleep. Those dreams of fighting and running and hiding and confronting things you cannot name. Those mornings when you open your eyes feeling like you barely survived something you cannot remember. Those are aftermath symptoms of conflicts fought in realms without language. While your body slept and your conscious mind rested, another part of you was engaged in warfare that has no vocabulary in human language. Battles against forces that attack through the layers of reality that exist beneath waking consciousness. You were not dreaming, you were deployed, and the fact that you woke up at all is evidence that you won far more often than you lost, even when the exhaustion made you feel defeated. Every morning you got out of bed, despite feeling like you had been destroyed in the night, was a victory you never got to celebrate because you did not understand the context of the war. The reason you feel ancient inside, older than your years, tired in ways that sleep cannot fix, carrying a gravity that other people your age do not seem to carry. This is not depression, though therapists might call it that. This is not trauma, though psychologists might diagnose it as such. You carry scars from wars humans do not have vocabulary for, wounds inflicted in combat that never appears on any battlefield visible to ordinary perception. You have been fighting since you were a child, even when your life looked peaceful from the outside, even when there was no obvious enemy to point to, no clear threat to name. The enemy has always been there, operating in frequencies most humans cannot detect, waging war against you in dimensions that remain invisible to consensus reality. And you have been defending yourself, pushing back, holding your ground without even understanding what you were holding or why it mattered so much. Every time you refused to break when breaking would have been easier. Every time you got back up when staying down would have been more comfortable. Every time you chose to continue when quitting was the logical option. You were winning battles in a war you did not know you were fighting. December is not your first war, chosen one. You have been at war your entire life, whether you knew it or not, whether you had the language to describe it or not, whether anyone believed you or not. But December is different. December is the war where past wars finally get acknowledged, where the victories you earned in silence finally get recorded in the official ledger, where the survival you managed alone in the dark finally gets witnessed and validated by the forces that sent you into battle in the first place. This is not a new war. This is the culmination of all the wars you already fought and survived. This is the moment when the unrecorded battles finally get added to your permanent record, and you discover that nothing you endured was wasted, nothing you survived was meaningless, and every scar you carry is actually a credential, proving you are qualified for what comes next. The silent recruitment. You were never called to this path through emotional experiences that made you feel chosen, or special, or divinely selected, in ways that boosted your ego and made you feel like you were better than others. There was no mystical moment when the heavens opened and a voice announced your destiny. There was no spiritual awakening where you suddenly understood your purpose and felt flooded with peace and certainty about your role in the cosmic plan. The recruitment was silent, chosen one. You were signed by function, not by feeling. Your specific combination of wounds, the particular architecture of trauma and survival that has been carved into you through years of experiences that seemed random and cruel, matched the criteria of a rare operational capacity that cannot be manufactured through training or teaching. You were not chosen because you are good. You were chosen because you are useful. Your pain created capabilities that cannot be replicated through meditation or prayer or any amount of spiritual practice. Your suffering built infrastructure inside you that makes you able to function in environments where others would collapse. The strange resilience you have always carried, The inexplicable ability to keep moving forward even when every logical reason said you should quit. The capacity to rebuild yourself after being shattered in ways that would have destroyed other people permanently. This was not personal strength. This was conditioning. While you thought you were just surviving, just getting through each day by sheer force of will, you were actually being trained. Every time you broke and rebuilt, a hidden counsel was watching, checking off another qualification box on a list you never saw, marking you as cleared for the next level of pressure. They were not impressed by your courage, chosen one. They were measuring your structural integrity, testing whether you could be broken and still retain your core function, assessing whether you would collapse into permanent victimhood or whether you would metabolize pain into something else entirely. And every time you got back up, they noted it. Every time you refused to stay down, they recorded it. Every time you chose to continue, even when continuing seemed impossible, they confirmed what they already suspected. You are one of the rare ones who can be broken without being destroyed. You were not taught in the way students are taught in schools, with lessons and lectures and clear explanations of what you need to know and why you need to know it. You were tempered in the way blacksmiths temper steel, through heat and pressure and repeated strikes that seem destructive but are actually refinement. Every relationship that betrayed you was not a mistake or bad luck in your choice of partners. It was a controlled burn, designed to remove your capacity to trust in external validation. Every opportunity that collapsed just as you reached for it was not evidence of your unworthiness. It was a stress test, measuring whether you would quit when success was denied or whether you would keep reaching despite the pattern of denial. Every period of isolation that made you feel abandoned by the entire universe was not punishment. It was the removal of distractions, the forced withdrawal from the noise of ordinary life so that you could develop the capacity to hear frequencies that only become audible in silence. The tempering was brutal because the mission is brutal. You were not being prepared for a life of ease and comfort. You were being prepared to function in conditions that would shatter anyone who had not been through what you have been through. By the last week of December, you are not being invited to step into your purpose. Invitations are for guests. Invitations come with the option to decline, to RSVP that you cannot make it, to send your regrets and stay home where it is safe and familiar. You are not being invited, chosen one. You are being expected. The difference is critical. Expectations do not care about your comfort level or your readiness or your feelings about whether you want this responsibility. Expectations are the terms of a contract that was signed before you were born, and December is when that contract moves from pending to active status. The forces that shaped you, that broke you, that rebuilt you, that tested you, that measured you, that signed you, they are not asking if you are ready. They are informing you that ready or not, the portal is opening, and you were designed specifically to walk through it. You can refuse. You can turn away. You can pretend you did not receive this briefing. But the expectation will remain, and so will the consequences of meeting it or failing to meet it. The systems that recognized you before you knew yourself. Technology glitches around you in ways that do not happen to other people. Chosen one. Your phone freezes at moments that feel too perfectly timed to be random. Your computer crashes just as you are about to complete something important. Electronic devices near you behave erratically, losing connection, malfunctioning, resetting themselves without explanation. And while you have probably spent years apologizing for it, joking about being cursed with technology, or feeling frustrated by your apparent inability to have normal relationships with ordinary devices, the truth is far stranger than malfunction. These devices are not breaking because you are doing something wrong. They glitch because they register you as an unclassified presence in their coded structure. The algorithms that govern electronic behavior, the programming that predicts and responds to human input, the digital infrastructure that runs smoothly for billions of other users. It stutters when it encounters you because you do not fit the parameters it was designed to recognize. You are an anomaly in the system, a variable that was not accounted for in the code, and machines respond to anomalies the only way they can, by malfunctioning in your presence. Laws of probability bend near you in ways that mathematicians would struggle to explain if they ever bothered to study your life closely enough to see the patterns. You think of someone you have not spoken to in years, and they contact you within hours. You need something specific, and it appears through a chain of coincidences so unlikely that even you struggle to accept them as random. You avoid a route you normally take and later discover there was an accident exactly where you would have been if you had followed your routine. Numbers repeat around you with obsessive frequency, appearing on clocks and receipts and license plates and addresses in combinations that feel like someone is trying to send you a message through the fabric of reality itself. These are not signs that you are learning to manifest or that you are becoming psychic. These are symptoms of probability distortion that occurs in the presence of beings who exist at the intersection of multiple timelines. Outcomes behave around you as if they were secretly briefed about you beforehand, as if reality itself received a memo explaining that when you enter a situation, the normal rules of cause and effect need to be adjusted to accommodate your presence. Animals stare at you longer than they stare at other humans, their heads tracking your movement with an intensity that goes beyond curiosity. Children gravitate toward you or recoil from you with reactions that seem too extreme for someone they just met, as if they are responding to something about you that adults have learned to ignore. Strangers lock eyes with you in public spaces and hold the contact just a moment too long, creating that uncomfortable sensation of being seen in a way that goes beyond ordinary social recognition. And while you have probably spent your whole life feeling self-conscious about this, wondering if there is something wrong with you that makes you stand out, the truth is that instinct recognizes hierarchical authority before consciousness does. Animals, children, and people operating on gut level rather than social programming can sense the presence of something in you that registers as different, as other, as operating under a classification that their hindbrain recognizes even though their thinking mind cannot name it. They stare because instinct is trying to determine whether you are threat or ally, because you emanate a frequency that triggers ancient survival assessment protocols in beings who still trust their primal senses. Doors open for you faster than physics should allow, swinging wide just as you reach for the handle, as if the building itself is eager to let you in. Other doors slam shut with force that feels personal, like the structure is rejecting your entry or trying to keep you contained. Elevators arrive the moment you press the button, or refuse to come no matter how many times you press it. Rooms go silent when you enter them, conversations stopping mid-sentence, as if your presence created a disruption in the flow of social energy. Lights flicker when you are angry. Weather shifts when you are in emotional turmoil. The physical world reacts to your existence like infrastructure acknowledging classified clearance, like reality itself has been coded to respond to your presence in ways that do not apply to ordinary humans. You are not imagining this. Chosen one. The world treats you differently because you are different, because you carry a designation that was assigned before you were born, a classification that exists in layers of reality that most humans never become conscious of. December's final days reveal how many systems have been accommodating you without explanation, bending their rules, adjusting their responses, making space for your presence in ways that would be impossible to ignore if you ever stopped long enough to see the full pattern of how reality behaves when you are in the room. The ancient ledger of debts. Every betrayal you endured was not the emotional misfortune you believed it to be in the moment when your heart was breaking and your trust was being shattered and your world was collapsing around you. Each act of treachery against you was a ledger entry, written in ink, that exists in courtrooms beyond human jurisdiction, recording in precise detail who did what to you, when they did it, why they did it, and what debt their actions created in the cosmic accounting system that tracks every exchange of harm and healing across timelines. Nothing was lost in the chaos of your suffering, chosen one. Every wound was witnessed. Every injustice was noted. Every betrayal was entered into evidence for a trial that has been building toward December, accumulating documentation that will be used to justify the reversal that is about to be executed on your behalf. The tears you cried in secret were not wasted. The pain you swallowed in silence was not forgotten. Every moment when you were wronged and said nothing, when you were hurt and told no one, when you were betrayed and had no witness, those moments were recorded by watchers you could not see, stored in archives that exist for the specific purpose of ensuring that nothing goes unanswered forever. Every humiliation you survived, every time you were made to feel small or stupid or worthless or broken, every public embarrassment that made you want to disappear, every private shame that made you question your value. These were not random cruelties or evidence that the universe does not care about your pain. Each humiliation stored in silence became evidence for a cosmic court case scheduled for December. Legal documentation proving that you were damaged by parties who had no right to damage you, that you were harmed by systems and individuals who operated outside their authorized jurisdiction in your life. Courts require evidence. Verdicts require documentation. Justice requires proof that harm occurred and that the victim deserves compensation. And you, chosen one, have been building the most comprehensive case file imaginable through years of suffering that you endured without understanding that your endurance was creating legal grounds for a reversal so complete that it will rewrite the entire trajectory of your existence. The humiliation you felt was not your truth. It was the lie they told about you. And December is when the court rules in your favor and the lie is officially struck from the record. Losses that did not make sense at the time, opportunities that vanished just as you were about to grasp them, relationships that ended without explanation, resources that disappeared when you needed them most, stability that dissolved without warning. None of these were permanent losses, chosen one. They were temporary confiscations, held in escrow inside a cosmic vault, labeled with your name and marked with the date of return. December, final week, when the portal opens. Everything taken from you was never truly gone. It was withheld, archived, stored in a realm where time does not cause decay, waiting for the predetermined moment when it would be returned to you with interest. The interest is not metaphorical. What was taken as a seed will be returned as a forest. What was lost as a single coin will be returned as a treasury. What vanished as a whisper will return as a roar. The vault has been filling with everything that was stolen from you, borrowed against your future, confiscated as temporary payment for debts you did not owe. And the vault opens this week. Nothing taken from you, vanished into the void, where lost things go to die. Everything was tracked, accounted for, logged with precision in the ledger of debts that must be balanced before the next cycle can begin. Your losses were not evidence of divine abandonment, or proof that you were cursed, or confirmation that you were unworthy of having what you desired. Your losses were strategic withdrawals, orchestrated by forces that understood something you did not understand, that carrying certain things would have slowed you down, that holding on to certain people would have kept you trapped, that maintaining certain versions of success would have prevented you from developing the capabilities that can only be forged through the specific kind of suffering that comes from having everything stripped away. You were not being punished, chosen one. You were being prepared. And preparation requires sacrifice, requires loss, requires the brutal removal of everything that does not serve the future you are about to enter. This week activates the repayment protocols. The vault opens, the ledger balances, the debts are settled, and you will understand finally that nothing was ever truly lost. It was only held in trust until you were strong enough to carry it. The hidden audience. Your life has not been private, chosen one. This is not a comforting truth, and it is not meant to be comforting. Privacy is an illusion that ordinary humans live within, believing their thoughts are their own, their struggles are unseen, their quiet moments of despair happen in isolation. But you are not ordinary, and your life has never been private. Every major decision you have made, every crossroads where you chose one path over another, every moment when you nearly broke, but somehow held yourself together. These were not private moments. They were observed, watched, witnessed by spectators who exist in dimensions you cannot perceive, but who have been tracking your story with the intensity of observers watching the final season of a show they have invested in for years. There are beings, entities, consciousnesses, call them what you will, who know your story better than you know it yourself. They watched your childhood when you thought no one was watching. They observed your teenage years when you were certain you were alone. They have been present for every heartbreak, every triumph, every failure, every secret shame you carried in silence, believing no one would ever know. These watchers were forbidden to intervene, bound by laws that exist in hierarchies you do not understand, prevented from reaching down into your timeline to fix what was broken, or remove what was painful, or smooth the path that has been so brutally difficult for you. They could only watch. They could only wait. They could only hope that you would survive long enough to reach the final gate, because their investment in your story is not sentimental or emotional. It is operational. They need you to succeed, not because they care about your happiness in the way friends and family might care, but because your success or failure determines outcomes in timelines beyond your own. Your life is not just about you, chosen one. It never has been. You are a variable in an equation that spans multiple realities, and there are forces who have been waiting to see whether you would break before the last gate, or whether you would hold your structural integrity long enough to complete the crossing. Your moments of despair, the ones when you were so broken you could barely breathe, when you questioned whether there was any point in continuing, when you felt so completely abandoned that you believed the universe itself had forgotten you. Those moments were not ignored. They were broadcasted as critical updates across realms that have been following your progress, transmitted as urgent alerts to councils and collectives who needed to know whether the chosen one was still functional, or whether the timeline had to be rerouted around your collapse. Every time you were on the edge of giving up, every time you stood at the precipice of total surrender, every time you felt the darkness closing in so completely that continuation seemed impossible, there were spectators holding their breath, watching to see what you would choose, knowing that your choice in that moment would ripple out across timelines in ways you could not comprehend. And every time you chose to continue, even when continuing was illogical, even when there was no evidence that things would get better, even when every rational calculation said surrender was the wiser option, those spectators recorded your choice as evidence that you were who they believed you to be. Not hopeful, not optimistic, not naive, just operationally functional beyond the point where most beings collapse. The reason you have often felt like you were living inside a story, like your life had a narrative quality that other people's lives did not seem to have, like there was some invisible script being followed even when you had no idea what the plot was. This is because you were living a story, chosen one. Not a story in the metaphorical sense that every life is a journey and everyone is the hero of their own narrative. A story in the literal sense that your life has been structured with acts and turning points and character development and rising tension, all building toward a climax that arrives in the last week of December. You have been both the protagonist and the performance, both the player and the game, living your life while simultaneously being watched by an audience that has been invested in your outcome since before you took your first breath. They were not watching for entertainment. They were watching because the stakes of your story extend beyond your personal fate into territories that affect their worlds, their timelines, their realities. Your survival matters to them. Your choices matter to them. Your arrival at this threshold matters to them in ways that would overwhelm you if you understood the full scope of what rides on, whether you walk through that portal or turn away from it. December is when the audience goes silent, chosen one. Not because they have stopped watching, but because the final sequence requires no commentary. This is the moment when everything that has been building finally reaches its conclusion, when all the preparation and testing and breaking and rebuilding finally reveals its purpose, when the story that has been unfolding across years and timelines finally arrives at the scene that determines whether it ends in tragedy or transformation. The watchers cannot help you now. The spectators cannot intervene. The forces that shaped you have done everything they can do, and now it comes down to you alone, standing at the threshold of the portal, making the choice that was always going to be yours to make. They are silent because this moment is sacred, because this choice is sovereign, because even beings who exist across multiple dimensions recognize that there are some crossings that can only be made by the one who stands at the crossing point. The audience watches in silence, waiting to see what you will do. The pattern of delayed victory. You were never allowed early success, chosen one, and this was not an accident of timing or evidence of your inadequacy or proof that you were doing something wrong while others who succeeded early were doing something right. Premature arrival would have destroyed your role in this operation. Success before you were ready, victory before you were prepared, recognition before you were hardened. These would have corrupted the very qualities that make you essential to what comes next. Early success creates entitlement. Quick victory breeds fragility. Recognition before refinement produces ego that cannot sustain itself under real pressure. You were kept from these things deliberately not because you did not deserve them, but because receiving them too soon would have turned you into someone who could never complete the crossing that opens in December. The delay was not punishment, it was preservation. You were being saved from the version of success that would have satisfied your temporary desires but disqualified you from your permanent purpose. Opportunities always came too late, arriving just after you had given up hope, just after you had stopped believing they would ever come, just after you had resigned yourself to a life that would never include what you had prayed for and worked for and sacrificed for. And every time this happened, every time, the timing felt cruel and senseless. Every time you watched others receive what you had been denied and wondered what was wrong with you, that you were always somehow out of sync with the flow of good things. You were being trained in something more valuable than achievement. You were learning to function without the reward structure that most humans require to stay motivated.